is not a thing that has existence. Evil has no being.
So the devil is not always going to come at you in a form that you're going to expect. It's not going to be obvious. Sometimes he'll come in a way where he seems like he's your friend. He seems like he's giving you good advice. He seems like he's helping you. He seems like a righteous person, but he's a deceitful worker.
Evil is the exercise of power, and that's the key. It's about power. To intentionally harm people psychologically, to hurt people physically, to destroy people mortally or ideas.
ISIL is the face of evil. Our goal, as I've said many times, is to degrade and ultimately destroy this barbaric terrorist organization.
The greatest evil is not done now in those sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not even done in concentration camps and labor camps.
Passionate protest against an evil and repulsive doctrine. An evil and repulsive doctrine.
Today, it's so easy for us to make quick judgments about what's good versus evil. Facebook news feeds are a constant stream of updates about crime and shocking stories of suffering. These stories are in turn riddled with a running commentary by anyone who can read and use the internet. What drives people to feel so much passion about certain issues and happenings? We fixate on these things and we label them evil. This video offers an interesting contrast between the realities of the Holocaust against the views of evil by the top German philosophers. Immanuel Kant was an 18th century German philosopher and widely considered the father of modern philosophy. He's a good place to start because most of the other philosophers we'll discuss, such as Schiller, Hegel, and Nietzsche, all disagree with him. So what does Kant think about evil? Kant thinks man is by nature evil, and it's our duty to suppress evil urges. But that seems difficult. Kant says we can do this using his categorical imperative. The categorical imperative says that if you take any action and generalize it universally, if it still seems like it has a positive outcome, then it's okay to do it. Let me simplify. It may seem like it's not that bad to cheat on a test when it's not hurting anyone around you and it's making your life better. But what if we generalize? What if then everyone in the world cheated on all of their tests? Would this have a good outcome? No, obviously not, because we would all be unskilled when we get into the real workforce, and the economy and the rest of the world would eventually fall apart. We can also look at the Holocaust under this same microscope. It's immediately clear that it fails under the categorical imperative because a universal generalization of innocent deaths would result in the extinction of the human race. But all these other philosophers have a lot of problems with Kant. If morality can only be achieved by negating man's negative sensuous impulses, then this means that morality is the negation of a negation, which according to them is a contradiction. Schiller in particular has a lot of problems with this, and says we can educate the emotions of man in order to bring them into harmony with reason. He says we don't need to negate man's natural impulses because our natural impulses are not evil. Schiller's solution is beauty, or what he calls the aesthetic. Schiller thinks that if you have evil impulses, it simply means that you have not been educated in the right way. Beauty, or what he calls the aesthetic, is the solution to Kant's contradiction. Schiller claims it's possible to elevate the moral character of a person by first touching their soul with beauty. So Schiller basically thinks an educated soul knows beauty, and as a result can learn to be in harmony with reason, that evil is merely the absence of beauty. This seems problematic when we look at it in reference to the Holocaust. In one sense, you can say that Schiller's right. We see these images now, and the amount of suffering that took place makes it obvious that those places, Auschwitz, Dachau, Ebensee, and all the people who organized them, such as Adolf Eichmann, who we'll revisit later, must have lacked beauty. But this leaves me to wonder how it was so easy for millions of Germans to blindly follow the words of a crazed dictator when these were for the most part people who were educated, typical working class people. If Schiller's right, and it's simply a matter of educating the soul to bring you into harmony with morality, why was it so easy for us to default to that evil he calls a lack of beauty? A potential answer is because it's just that, a default. Then if evil is a lack of beauty, and the human default seems to be this lack of beauty, how can we ever know what is right? How can we ever know what is beauty and whether or not we are educating our souls properly? Hitler believed he was making Germany more beautiful by cleansing it. A sick and twisted misconception of what is actually beautiful in the world. Let's take a look at what Hegel thinks. Hegel takes a very different approach from Schiller. He recognizes that the natural human tendency is actually toward the immoral. So what does he say is evil? According to Hegel, the origin of evil in general lies in the mystery, i.e., the speculative process of freedom, in the necessity of freedom to rise out of its natural state and find itself in opposition to the natural. And what does he think is the natural? Well, that's the tendency towards evil. Sorry, Schiller, it seems like you're wrong according to Hegel. And what is the natural will according to Hegel? Desire, impulse, and inclination. In other words, we all have a choice. We have a choice to go the easy route and let ourselves stay in our natural state, or we have the choice to take responsibility and rise out of the natural state into the moral. Hegel's ultimate evil person is someone who acts but denies responsibility for their actions. It seems like this responsibility and this choice are very significant, unless your name is Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche says it's absolutely impossible to apply one single moral code to all people. We keep discussing this idea of good versus evil as if they're black and white polar opposites with clear definitions, but according to Nietzsche, the only truths that we know in the world are simply born from our prejudices. I might think it's true that Adolf Hitler was evil, but that's because I've been raised to believe that. Essentially, Nietzsche thinks the definition of evil is completely relative to the person describing it, and it all depends on whether or not they see it from a pre-moral standpoint, meaning that the value of an action is found in its consequence, or a modern moral standpoint, meaning the value of an action is found in its origin. Nietzsche's viewpoint seems like it allows some extreme actors to hold no responsibility. Is evil relative to the person causing it? And if I cause evil, but I do not know that I am causing evil, am I then evil? It seems like I may be guilt-free under Nietzsche's perspective. But this, like many other definitions of evil, seem to give figures like Adolf Hitler and Adolf Eichmann an escape for what they have done. An escape from actions that the average person knows are evil from some gut feeling we have within us. But does it take something this extreme for us to realize what evil actually is? Take, for example, Adolf Eichmann. He's the epitome of someone who acted but denied responsibility for his actions. Eichmann was an SS officer and in charge of facilitating and managing the logistics of mass deportations of Jews to ghettos and extermination camps. He's charged with helping facilitate hundreds of thousands of deaths. In his trial, he took the stance that he was simply doing his duty assigned to him by his nation. He acted but did not take responsibility. Hannah Arendt was a political philosopher who covered the entire Eichmann trial in a series of articles called The Banality of Evil. In his trials, Eichmann complained that he regretted nothing and was simply obeying the laws of war and staying loyal to his flag. In his trial, Eichmann was charged for crimes against humanity. Arendt claims that the most striking thing about Eichmann, a man who almost the entire world viewed as evil, seemed so normal, or in her words, banal. She says, the trouble with Eichmann was precisely that so many were like him, and that the many were neither perverted nor sadistic, that they were and still are terribly, terribly normal. This normality is much more terrifying than all the atrocities put together. So maybe by labeling Eichmann evil, it's a way to explain away negative human action by making it seem like an extreme case or an anomaly, when in fact, maybe Hegel and Kant had it right when they said that the natural human tendency is actually toward the immoral. So what is evil? Is it undefinable and relative like Nietzsche claims? Is it all around us because it's actually the natural human tendency like Kant, Hegel, and Arendt seem to imply? Or is Schiller right, and it's merely a lack of beauty? What is evil?